Hello, so today we're going to talk about lesson 4.5, which is figuring out equations. So equations are just mathematical sentences that have an unknown in them. And the way you handle them is they have some properties, and they're called the properties of equality. And all of them say if you do it on the left side of the equation, you do it on the right side of the equation, because they have to be equal. So if you add, you add. You subtract, you subtract. You multiply, you multiply. Divide, you divide. So that's properties of equality, and you need them when you're solving them. So other things about equations, they have an equal sign and they have a variable. Variables are just letters that represent the unknown in an equation. So that's basically that. So you could have 3 plus t equals 5, and then you would just solve it. So the very first thing you do is you want to get t all by yourself, and you can see how to do all this in that other video. But basically you subtract 3 on both sides, leaving t equals 2. And then you can check it by putting your answer back in and verifying that that's true. And that's how you kind of deal with equations. Now, the other thing you could do is an inequality. So if we had 3 plus t is greater than 5, you still do the same thing. You subtract 3 on both sides, and t must be greater than 2. So you couldn't put 2 in there, because if you put 2 in there, they'd be equal, and that's not true. So you could put any number. If it's greater than, it's any number. So 3 plus 3 is greater than 5. So when you have something like this, you can graph it. So you'll see a number line like this. It'll say like 0, -1, -2, 1, 2. So when you're graphing inequalities, so if we had like t is greater than 2, so it can't be 2, but you're still going to put your dot, big open dot like that, and then you know that it has to be bigger than, so you draw an arrow line to the end of the graph, just like that. Now if this showed an equal sign underneath, you color this in. And I like to tell people, if the alligator's hungry, you leave it open. If the alligator's full because he ate it, he has a tail, and you then color it in. So you got greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. So this guy, open dot, because the alligator's hungry. Remember, if you draw little teeth on him, because he always eats the bigger number. Right? This guy says, hey, less than, also an open dot. This guy says, oh, I ate that number, I'm going to keep it. Close it in. And then that one, close it in. Okay? So if I put x is less than or equal to 6, you draw your line, or it would be drawn for you, and you'd find 6 on your number line. And then you'd find 6, and since it has the equal symbol, because he ate that number, color it in, and then it says it has to be less than. So your unknown has to be less than. All right, that's how you graph them. Now, what that sentence is saying, x less than or equal to 6, is if it asks you, what does this mean? What does this mean? Well, we know that it's this number. Oh, this over here has to be smaller than this over here. But the sentence is, this means any number less than or equal to 6. So if somebody asks you, what does this mean? That's what you would say. So if we had like x is greater than 2, it means any number greater than 2. You actually have to put the words greater than 2. You can't just do the symbols like I just did. Okay? Well, that's how you deal with that. So now, let's say you're dealing with an absolute value. So an absolute value is the distance from 0. Or you could say number of spaces. Right? So what that means is if I show you a number that looks like this, these lines right here are called brackets or bars, and they tell you, I want to know how many spaces this number inside here is from 0. So what it is that if you see a negative symbol, you just check it, because the number is 12. You are 12 spaces from 0. So if you put a positive 12 inside the brackets, you are still 12 spaces from 0. So the negative and the positive are the exact same when it comes to absolute values. Okay? So if you were to see an expression, absolute value of negative 12 is greater than 15. You have to put true or false. Well, okay, so we know this is 15 spaces, right? This guy says negative 12, but what it wants to know is the number of spaces, because you got these little bar guys here. So you think of them like a jailer holding that negative hostage. It is 12 spaces. So then this is false. Now, if it was negative 16 is greater than 15, it would be true, because that's 16, because the bars, there you go. So that would be true, right? All right. So then we're going to look over here and see what else we got to do. Don't forget you need to do your order operations. So if you saw something like the absolute value of negative 12 plus t equals 4, the first thing you want to do is get rid of the bars. So it becomes 12 spaces plus t equals 4. And then you got to get rid of the 12. So if you add, you subtract. It's always you do the opposite of whatever's in the equation. And you got to do it on both sides. These guys cross out because 12 minus 12 is 0, so they go away. You bring down your t. And then 4 minus 12 is negative 8. And you can check that. You can say 12, the absolute value of negative 12 plus negative 8, because that's what your answer was, equals 4. So we know that this is just 12 spaces, plus negative 8 is the same as writing minus 8, equals 4. And 12 minus 8 does equal 4, so it's true. All right. So one of the things that you might see when you're doing this is you might see something like 3 times 29 plus 121 equals 450. So this is pretty scary looking, right? Not really. So there's two ways you can solve this. The first way is called the distribution method. And distribution just means your invader on the outside here, this is a multiplication symbol, it's not an X. Your invader is attacking your castle. And when he attacks, he has to capture both sides. So then it becomes 3 times 29 plus, because it's the same symbol, 3 times 121 equals 450. Right? Or, I'm sorry, does not equal 450. That's going to get a way bigger number. Actually, it was 450. I scared myself for nothing. So you multiply 3 times 29. 29 times 3 is 7, 6, 7, 8, 87. Plus 121 times 3, 363. And then we have 363 plus 87, 10, carry the 1, 14, 15, carry the 1, 450. So it's true. 450 equals 450. So that's what distribution means. So that's the first way you do it. And you write it like this. Okay? The other way you can do it and write it, and it's just the same. This is just whatever you prefer. You've got 3 times 29 plus 121 equals 450. And we're still distributing. You could draw tree brackets so that you know you need to multiply those two together to get 87. And then you have to draw another set of tree brackets. Bring down your plus sign to get the 363 equals 450. Then you add these two together. 10, carry the 1, 14, 15, carry the 1 equals 450. Either way is correct. Whichever way you like to write it is the correct way. And that's how distribution works. So then, looking through the rest of these to see what we can talk about. So inequalities work just like regular equations, which we've already talked to them about a little. So you can, inequalities are just math sentences that compare two numbers together. So like 5 is less than 10 is an inequality. Or 5 plus x is less than 10 also. Or the absolute value plus x is less than 10. 10. So this one's just true. That's just a statement, that's an inequality. This guy, you would subtract 5 on both sides, so you get x is less than 5. Okay? This guy, you want the absolute value, so you want the number of spaces. So you get 5 plus x less than 10. Subtract the 5 again, and get x is less than 5. And that's how that works. All right. We talked about graphing, so we're going to just do a couple problems where you can see how it works out. So if we were to say, we've already done that, so let's do a problem so you can see it. So if we had x plus 2 is greater than 4, first thing you want to do is solve like it's an equation. So you're going to subtract 2 on both sides. X greater than 2. And then remember on your number line, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. You're going to put your dot at 2, and the alligator has no tail, so he's hungry, so you're going to leave him open. And then the arrows, if you notice, your symbols make like an arrow point, and it points the direction you want your line to go, just like that. That's how you graph them. All right. So then we're going to talk about absolute value as distance. So if you ever heard sea level is at 0 on the planet. And anything above sea level is a positive number. So mountains, houses, caves, they're all above sea level. You hear anything talk about below sea level, they're negative. So we got positive, negative, right? So we got like submarines, fish, seaweed. Those are all below sea level. So if somebody said, my submarine is at 282 feet below sea level, what is the distance they are? That answer would be negative 282 feet, because it's below sea level. And they say, well, okay, well, how far is that from sea level? Well, we know we're below 282 feet, so you'd think it'd be the same answer. Sort of. They're asking you how many spaces below 0, which looks like this. Or you would say the absolute value of 282. That's how you write this. So this one is the actual distance. This one is the number of spaces from 0. All right. Let's see if we have anything else you want to do. Absolute value. We've already talked about. Probably bored you to death at this point. Just making sure I got all the questions you need. So, it's really important when you're writing stuff out on any of these tests. So, like on the test regarding Unit 4B, which is what we've just been talking about, that you have to define your variable, Then write your equation or inequality. And then if it tells you, you have to show your work and then graph it. Now when you get to the equations test, you have to write your equation. So like x plus 5 equals 10. Then you have to show your work of how you figure it out, which is simple as writing the -5 and -5 to show you did the math. You bring x down. These guys battle it out and go away. And these guys battle it out, leaving 5. So that is your answer. And your answer has to be in this format. You can't just put 5. You have to put x equals 5 or whatever variable they used. And then you check it. You plug this number because now we know what x is. So we say 5 plus 5 equals 10. And if this is true, this guy is true. And that's everything you need to know for this test.